Good evening, everyone. Good day, good morning, good night. Wherever you may be, it's good to have you and welcome to 2023. We are just about a week into it, but it's good to be back on the Global Kingdom Conversation. Good to see you all loading up and coming on in. We're looking forward to having a great year in this year of 2023 with high expectancy and with all of the things that we have really been believing to receive and see in this time by bringing a better us to the mix, right? Bringing a better product of our hearts and our minds and energies and so forth. At least that's my determination. So I'm really looking forward to that. So it's just good to be here. We have Anderson Williams with us, and we see David Castro, who was a part of our creative core team. Good to see you, David. And we see so many of your familiar faces. We're coming on in, and it's just good to have you. Good to have you. Good to have you. Good to see you all. So we greet you, welcome you to another Global Kingdom Conversation. So I believe we'll set sail here in a few minutes, okay? So please stand by. Good to have you all. All right, we're going to get started here, and welcome again to the Global Kingdom Conversation for 2023. Good to have each of you all coming in, and good to see familiar faces from 2022 carrying on over. Good to have you all here. We're going to get started, and we want to make sure we have enough time allotted for our presentation and all that will go on today. So it's good to have Anderson Williams with us. And Andy, we'll now turn it over to you. Good to have you today.
That's it, man. Well, good good afternoon, good evening, good night. No matter where in the world you find yourself, let me wish all of you a very happy New Year.
Okay, and, Andy, we can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me? I don't know what's going on here, guys.
Looks like your mic is open,
you.
But we can't hear.
You can hear me? Can you all hear me?
Yeah, I can hear.
In whichever area of responsibilities we may have. Forgive me today if I'm coughing and all of that. I really have not had a very, very good couple weeks. I mean, from Christmas into New Year's, I've been more like a pincushion, been subject to all kinds of different needles and all kind of stuff. And I'm not at my best self physically, but this is not a meeting that I wanted to miss. So if in the event I cough and anything else in this meeting, please forgive me. Let me get right into this evening's presentation. And as always, guys, I want us to at least have a buoyant interaction. This platform seeks to be a more provocative platform. And the conversations that we have here is almost a combination of peering into or looking into the next range of God's speaking. But at the same time, we want at least to provoke you sufficiently to think outside the box and to see the purpose of God outside of the zone that we've grown accustomed to looking at it. So let me just kind of share my screen here. Give me a few minutes. Let me share my screen. Let me get my, oops, did I close my PowerPoint? Did I? I think that's where it is. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, see.
Okay, let me this always gives me some problems. All right, and I'm gonna move this up. Okay, well, let me get into this today. What I wanna talk about, really, I'm gonna start here, but I'm gonna quickly segue into some areas that I believe are very, very important based on what I think God is directing me and leading me into. But there is an urgent need for us to be more deliberate in course correcting the path that we have found ourselves in. Now, we don't have the authority to more or less grab the global church and put it on the right path, but wherever we individually have responsibilities, we have to utilize our influence as best as we can to steer our constituents or our colleagues in a direction away from the current madness that passes for Christianity. It is important that if we join this particular platform and other platforms like these, that we don't treat what we're hearing only as archiving information. We must be deliberate to make the jump from hearing information to executing it in terms of how we think and how we behave. And so course correction is a critical part of our building and doing what we're doing on this platform. And I'll tell you why. Because we've come to a place in God where we cannot assume that the piecemeal offerings of truth is sufficient to correct the whole system. So what happens in most places is that the church is going down a religious path, barreling down a path that is going into a mad zone. And we assume that maybe one conference, one powerful Sunday morning, one excellent guest speaker will pull everything back in a way that we are totally correct and ideal. But what happens often is that we have one powerful step forward, but a whole bunch of giant steps backward. And so without a critical course corrective exercise, we would have that constant two-step. We go forward and make a two-step and then make another step backward. We go forward one and make a couple steps backward. And we really need to arrest this slide. So let's talk a little bit about the criticality of course correcting. And listen to me. What do you see there? What do you see there? You don't have to answer me. You don't have to unmute your mic and answer me, but what do you see? What you're seeing is a church that is lost in a little bubble. And that has all kinds of meanings inside of it. But this is what it represents. The current church is like the hermit kingdom. Those of you who are familiar with international relations and geopolitics, you know that North Korea for many years was described as a hermit kingdom. It was removed from the geopolitical landscape and it lived on its own. And so the current church is like the hermit kingdom, disconnected, cynical, critical, led by despots, and living in a monastic, polarized world between religion and the real. And that's a loaded comment right there, because that speaks to all kinds of dysfunctionality. It speaks to all kinds of behavioral patterns and mindsets and attitudinal norms that must be confronted. This hermit disposition that we have basically subscribed to, where we are disconnected, we find more time criticizing what the world is doing. We are cynical about what the banking system is doing, what the business world is doing. We are very, very good at pointing a finger, but we lack the ability to look in the mirror and really address ourselves. So let me repeat that one important point. The current church is like the hermit kingdom, disconnected, cynical, critical, led by despots. That's an important part of the exercise. People who are more concerned about deepening their pockets, people who are living with serious messianic delusions and thinking that they are the grandest and biggest thing outside there. Many networks are led by people of that particular order. And this church lives inside of this monastic frame. Monastic meaning that we are hidden away in buildings, but we are not functional outside of the building. And we are living in this polarized world between two poles. It's religion on one side and the real in the other, and we are locked in one dimension and incapable of effectively addressing the other. So that's where we are. We are living in a bubble. Now listen, its overall persona, that is the persona of the church, has contributed to its position at the lowest rung on the innovative, productivity, professional, and prosperity ladder. When I talk about the lowest rung, you know what a ladder is like. The rung is those stairs. And so if you think about a ladder and we describe the church occupying the lowest rung, you are like the first step upward. So it's our whole disposition. Now, some of us don't like to hear this kind of conversation because we think we are just being critical of where the church is at. This is not a matter of us being critical. This is a matter of us being real. So we have this religious disposition, hiding away in buildings, going through what we call worship. My definition of worship is nothing more than ambiance grooming. We sing songs and we go through the rhythm to create an environment that is appropriate to our definition of God being here. So you would sing your songs and go through all of that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, we occupy the lowest rung in this ladder. So let me say it again. Our overall persona, how we think, how we behave, how we interpret God, how we interpret the world, how we interpret ourselves, how we see ourselves, it has positioned us at the lowest rung on the innovative, productivity, professional, and prosperity ladder. What does that mean? We are the least productive. We are the least innovative. We are the least professional, and we are the least prosperous. And so we have to correct that particular slide, and we have to think differently. We have to assume a different posture. And this year, 2023, is as good a time as any for us to think beyond this particular model and begin to deliberately move towards building new platforms. Listen to me. Here is another image. Rest in peace, the church of yesterday. And again, this is the truth. The ordained version of the church died a long time ago. Again, some of us may not like to agree with it, but the ordained version, that version of strength and power and dominance and influence and impact and transformation, that version of the church died a long time ago. And it is survived by this comical version that exists on a scale that is almost impossible to parody. Meaning that you speak to some of your friends and you talk about you walking with God. Some of you on this platform may be even ashamed to tell some of your friends that you're a Christian because it is so comical. This is like get a bag of popcorn, sit down. Sunday morning is comedy hour in the realm of darkness because the stuff that passes for God is comedy. This is like at a scale that is almost impossible to parody. People stop making fun of this thing anymore because you could hardly come up with another comical statement to justify the quality of this particular church. We have to break that. So let me say it again. The ordained version of church has died a long time ago, and it is survived by this comical version that exists on a scale that is almost impossible to parody. Who we are betrays all that we profess. So we talk about being the head and not the tail. Those are good confession, but not reality. We talk about above only, but not beneath. We talk about the wealth of the sinners laid up for the just. And we have all of these wonderful confessions, but we don't have the appropriate interface to make those confessions a reality. So the truth is the wealth of the sinner is not at this point in time in the coffers of the just. Every Monday morning, we run to the unsaved bank to put our money inside of there, and it is the unsaved banker who is saying the wealth of the righteous is coming into my coffers every single Monday. Do you understand that all over the world, the largest deposits that are made in banks happen on a Monday morning after Sunday? So who we are betrays a lot of what we profess. We live in the fumes of an empire. And like ancient Nero, we are playing church while Rome burns. And these are real concerns that we have to consider in our building forward, because we can no longer just engage in religious, monotonous church. Like Nero, we'll be singing our songs and having our wonderful church gatherings and having our wonderful little church conferences, but Rome is burning, whatever Rome represents. And so we have to arrest this issue. Listen to me further. Course correction, therefore, is necessary. It's critically important. Now, To right this ship, there cannot be piecemeal injections of truth. So it can't just be like this platform. We have already dismissed the notion that we are the only ones who are trying to correct disorder. If ever any one of us on this platform assumes that delusion, we are just as mad like everybody else. And so we are making a little contribution. Other people are making little contributions as well. Yesterday, I jumped on to a meeting that Dio hosted out in Nigeria. Very excellent presentation, beautiful presentation. And I would want Dio at some point to be on this platform to share some of the stuff that he's doing. But I celebrate what Dio is doing because he is totally committed to the course corrective initiative. I could talk about Abraham John. He had a massive meeting on the 1st of January. I could not jump on, but these guys are doing a remarkable work. Wolfgang Simpson, he has several platforms happening out of Germany. Had some time to talk to a group out in Australia the other day. Excellent work is happening all over the world, but to correct or to right the ship, there cannot be piecemeal injections of truth, but there must be a comprehensive and systemic terraformation of all that passes for church and Christianity. Now, that's a statement I need for you to write down. To right this ship, there cannot be piecemeal injections of truth, but there must be comprehensive and systemic terraformation. Some of you would have heard me use that word before because I don't subscribe to the current agenda of reformation. I don't think that God is after the reformation of this initiative. He's after the terraformation. Every single system must be re-engineered to make it habitable to God. And so there has to be a comprehensive and systemic terraformation of all that passes for church and Christianity. Without that, we will make a few baby steps forward and giant steps backward. And that's the reason why this whole conversation of course correction is so very, very, very important. Listen, look at this simple little piece of graphic and you'll understand where we have found ourselves. So this graphic basically describes the ordained path. If we were to maintain consistency, correctness, without drifting 300 AD and running into institutionalized formats and being discombobulated by Constantine and the whole Roman system, if we had maintained the course, then we would have gone from point A to point B at the two extreme end of that particular line and be very, very good. However, this is what we've looked like. We've gone from one place and had a bunch of oops and a bunch of too little. We had a little bunch of, well, almost there. And then we had conferences and we just kind of, well, oh no, we almost made it just a little closer. And we jumped from one path to another one, nearly made it. It's like, whoa, we almost there. Then we go into another zone. Let's try again. And then we way down there where we just missed it. Now, those crooked lines represent the many pathways that we've taken and how we've abandoned the very straight path that God has ordained for us. We have to pull this thing back. And this is what is so important, that we can no longer protect the strategies that we've applied. We must correct these strategies in order to change our outcomes. Critical part, we can no longer protect. We must be committed to correcting our strategies. And so most people get offended when they hear us talk about the church in this particular way, because they continue to protect the madness and they're not committed to correcting the madness. Course correction is something we're going to circle back around and talk a great deal about in this particular year, and more so within the first phase of this operation. Now, that brings me to the other part of this conversation today. Maybe before I go forward, I should pause for a second and open up the lines and see, well, what did you hear me say? What did you hear in this first part of this presentation? What did you hear? Anybody wants to jump in there and tell me something that you must have heard, maybe offended by, you don't like, you wish I could say it over, clarify, adjust it, add a couple more to it, or maybe you have a few things that you will add to, that you would like to add to it. What did you hear me say? in this first part of the presentation. Anybody wants to take the lead? Now, unfortunately, I can't see whose hand may be up, so I'm going to ask Kelvin to more or less direct traffic there in that regard. Anyone?
Okay, I'll start here, Anderson. It goes back to your first slide. I really haven't gotten past the first slide, and I thought about something that normally isn't maybe even considered, and that is the thing. Yeah, that's it right there. And I think about who's trapped inside. A lot of these professionals, productivity, prosperity ladder, all of that is trapped inside of that bubble. And so it's not just the church itself, it's who's trapped inside of that church that has productivity that not only helps the church, that box right there, but the community. And I also notice it's not even in a neighborhood, nothing's around it. It's isolated by itself. And so I haven't been able to get past the that part right there. I haven't been able to get past that part right there, seeing how in solitude and how disconnected this model of church in a bubble is ineffective in reaching out, and the prisoners who are trapped inside. So it's a very serious and sobering thing to me. So thank you. Right now we have, let's see, no hands up yet. No hands up yet.
Yeah, no hands up sometimes indicates a lot of thoughtfulness, or no hands up just be like, you know what, I don't even know what to contribute at the moment, or I don't know how to express my disagreement.
Cool.
I'm trying to find the most appropriate words to maintain the quorum. Anybody wants to?
Yes, I'd like to say something, if I may, Pat Morgan.
Sounds
Yes.
like Mama Pat.
Got Mama Pat here. Let's see. Where did she go? Where'd she go? Okay. That's iPhone. Okay.
I think it sounded like Mama Pat to me. It sounded
It really did.
Yeah.
Yes, can you hear me now then?
We can.
Wonderful. When our brother and Anderson announced the topic, I thought immediately of something you introduced us to maybe a year ago, which was the importance of the rudder on a huge ship, how the course has to be corrected and you can't afford to make the slightest move of the rudder, is it? That significant part of a huge ship. Because if you do, you're going to find yourself going along a course and it will need significant correction. So right. I'm linking what you taught us then with what you're about to teach us, and fully agree with all that you've said so far. Thank you.
Beautiful. Anyone else? I still can't see the if any hands are going up, I can't see them. So Kelvin,
yeah, right. I'm here.
You could also volunteer a personal tour.
Okay. All right.
Let me hear Leon. Leon out
Leon.
of South Africa. Leon,
that's what I was going to go for.
Leon, I think.
Hi guys. This is so far. I'm absolutely enjoying the candid approach to actually re-engineering our way forward, and the point of that we can't just introduce piecemeal into our process and expect the entire system to change is an absolute valid point. There has to be a complete re-engineering of what we've done and to replot our way forward. Thank you.
Right. Good.
Yeah.
Leon was speaking into this particular point there, that to right this ship, there cannot be piecemeal injections of truth, but there has to be a comprehensive and systemic terraformation of all that passes for church and Christianity. That's an important point. The reason why I'm saying that is because I want to speak a great deal, particularly within the first phase of these conversations, on the issue of entrepreneurship, the marketplace, and business. And if at all we in a particular zone, if we continue to live in this religious bubble, we will discombobulate that conversation. So this movement away from this traditional, dysfunctional, institutional, anti-God Babylonian model, movement away from that is important, because the moment you begin to touch the next frequency, this system will corrupt the next frequency. And so I say again, to right this ship, there cannot be piecemeal injections of truth, but there has to be a comprehensive and systemic terraformation of all that passes for church and Christianity. Without that, we'll make a few baby steps forward and giant steps backward. All right? Anyone else before we, we jump
Ezra
into
Williams.
Yes, Ezra. You have to unmute your mic, Ezra, if at all you're there. They there?
Ezra, are you there? Ezra had his mic unmuted. I don't know what happened. Ezra, you can unmute if you're there. Okay. I guess not. I guess we.
Okay, let's go forward. Let me
Sure.
We did this, we did that. We talked about the jagged lines on and off and the many mistakes, the oops and the too little and almost there. Wow, wonderful message. But all along, we are way off course in all kinds of different dimensions. And so we do need, you realize all the jagged lines basically are so far away from the ordained path. And so the point I made at the end there is that we can no longer protect, but we must correct our strategies in order to change outcomes. Now, let's get into the other part of this conversation today. And then I'm going to involve Charles and some other guys to jump in and make some interjection. Now, this particular presentation, I'm going to expand on this. Now, let me give you an important caveat very early. To some of you who would love for this to continue to be a nice scripture quoting kind of exercise, as we get deeper into this whole issue of the laws of biblical entrepreneurship, it will have less scripture quoting, but it will remain very biblical. And so I've been doing a lot of research on these particular issues, but I know some of you have grown accustomed to the model of teaching where you have a Bible verse and then the Bible verse basically underscores and celebrates the concepts going forward. But this is a mature group here. At least I will define you to be such that this is a mature group. And so in building forward, I want you to discover kingdom principles, even if we don't have the time to give you biblical addresses. And that's important. So let's explore this whole area of biblical entrepreneurship. And I'll start by simple scripture, but important. Simple, but very important. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, the earth was formless and empty, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters, and God said, let there be light. And we all know all the efforts that God put in order to create and stabilize and make a perfect environment that man would benefit from. We all know the efforts he put in there. And over the next couple of weeks, we'll be going back to Genesis chapter 1. We'll be drilling into Genesis chapter 1 and unearthing all kinds of biblical concepts in trying to understand areas of wealth creation, areas of marketplace functionality, because I believe this is so very, very important. So I'm not going to drill into all, this is the wrong address, sorry, that's Genesis chapter 1. That's 1 and 2, sorry. Wrong address in the quotation there, sorry. But we all know all of those verses in Genesis chapter 1 where God put extraordinary efforts into creating a world that was beneficial to man. Here's my first point. The first sight of God, the first sight we have of God, first sight, observe Genesis chapter 1. In the beginning, God. The very first sight we have of God is not a savior, not a redeemer, but that of a creative, innovative entrepreneur. Now that right there is explosive in my mind, because this is how we know God. God only exposes dimensions of himself that he wants us to discover. Because to understand this God, we only understand him by revelation. He unveils himself, and he only unveils those dimensions that he wants us to discover. So Abraham was about to take his son and sacrifice him on an altar, and God showed up, and Abraham built an altar and gave him a name, a God who sees beforehand. We think that Jehovah Jireh means that God will just hand out checks and money. The word Jireh, provide, basically means to see beforehand. When God who demonstrates or shows himself as the God who provides, he is not the one who giving you money, giving you checks and paying your bills. He is the God who sees beforehand. That's how Abraham discovered him. So Abraham's perspective was God provided a lamb in the thicket long before I even walked up to this mountain. And so he is the God who provides. And Abraham built an altar. And we don't have altars in our churches. What you have is the front of your building. So every time you hear, come to the altar, that doesn't exist, because altars are not the front of your building where there's a rail and you kneel down. Altars were places of God discovery. Wherever you discovered God, you built an altar to celebrate your point of discovery. And so every time God unveils himself, he does it deliberately so that we can get a sight of who he is. And in the beginning, the sight that we have of God is not of Savior, not of Redeemer. This is the first and immediate sight of God that we discovered in the very beginning. The first image that we have of God is that of a creative, innovative entrepreneur. Now, think with me for a second and ask yourself, what are some of the most explosive components that could come out of that? Listen to me further. We were made in his image. And this is the point you have to get. Thus, entrepreneurship is not an esoteric bracket reserved for a selective few. Now, this is the sight we have of God. And then God made us in that image. Therefore, the moment you think about marketplace and business and thoughtfulness and making money and making investments, that is not an esoteric bracket. This is not some zone reserved only for the few. We sometimes are left with this delusional concept that this is something that's only allocated to some. One of the things that we'll discover is this, that when the Bible talks about God in the image of God, the very word in the Hebrew language describes a terminology that every major empire that lives by kings and dependent on kings, that is the image that they utilize. The image of God is a term that kings ascribe to themselves. So even Pharaoh in Egypt was basically defined as the image of God. Kings always gravitated towards that and almost owned that title for themselves. Every king throughout history and every empire that depended on a king standing at the top, every single king that lived and functioned out of massive empires held on to that thing for themselves. The image of God was always seen as something reserved for kings. Now, that is the reason why we developed this idea of this esoteric model, that it had kings and peasants, so only some could live in it, and some really cannot ever attain these lofted positions. And so when you understand that we are all kings in God, that we are we are a kingdom of priests, and we are kings and priests, you understand that when God made us in his image, he is not describing a standard that's only reserved for the elite. We have somehow accepted that as a normal. We have basically subscribed to that great divide of kings and peasants. And so, well, once you talk about wealth, well, that is not our department. I am just an average believer. When it comes to innovation, not my department. I'm just an usher in my church. When it comes to areas of creativity, that is not something that I can do. That must be reserved for the Steve Jobs of this world. But we were made in that image. Therefore, this is something that every single believer must have as crafted or grafted into his literal DNA. It's a natural part of who we are. Now, that's an important point. That speaks profoundly into all kinds of areas of your thinking. I want every single one of us in this conversation no longer to assume that big divide of peasants and kings where, well, I'm just a little peasant. And so these big areas of entrepreneurship and creativity and innovation is not a zone that I live out of. This is a zone that you're ordained to live out of. This is your designated place. This is part of your ordained DNA. And so we were made in that image. Thus, entrepreneurship is not an esoteric bracket reserved for a selected few. Very important. Listen to me further. Now, when we talk about God being an entrepreneur, let's define an entrepreneur in this regard. An entrepreneur organizes, manages, and assumes the risk of an enterprise for the good of others. Basic definition: an entrepreneur organizes, manages, and assumes the risk of an enterprise for the good of others. Now, when we talk about a kingdom entrepreneur, the point I want you to get very early from this fundamental definition is that a kingdom entrepreneur is not driven by selfishness. Note the latter part: for the good of others. An entrepreneur in the kingdom is not concerned about deepening his pocket, enriching himself. He is not driven by greed, because I promise you, where greed exists, corruption will definitely follow. A kingdom entrepreneur is not driven by the materialistic, greed, money-grabbing, corrupt kind of disposition. God, in the beginning, committed himself to create a world for the good of others. God engaged in organizing, managing, and putting in place an enterprise, call it earth, call it the world, call it the garden, for the good of others. And so, basic definition, we're going to build on that fundamental definition of what an entrepreneur is. An entrepreneur organizes, manages, and assumes the risk of an enterprise for the good of others. Secondly, an entrepreneur is an agent of change, fundamental principle. Now, for some of you may know that there's a distinction between a businessman and an entrepreneur. On the most fundamental level, a businessman basically just engages in doing the work of his business, however that is, and he's concerned about his spreadsheets. An entrepreneur, on the other hand, is an agent of change. He is always willing to make the adjustment, always willing to engage in new initiatives, always tracking new developments in order to bring a greater degree of productivity and wealth for the good of others. An entrepreneur is an agent of change. Now, this is something that all of us live out of. Thirdly, understand, entrepreneurship is the process of discovering new ways of combining resources in order to give new vitality to an economy. Very important. Now we're going to build on all of this. This is the starting point of a new conversation that we're going to run into. Entrepreneurship is the process of discovering, see that part right there? Discovering new ways of combining resources. And combining resources is not just natural, physical, material resources. In the beginning, God, the Elohim, the three-in-one, three characters gathered together, combined their resources in order to give vitality to an economy. Very important. What is entrepreneurship? It is the process of discovering new ways of combining resources. Now, deep inside of that third point is this whole need for us to begin to see entrepreneurship not just as an individual drive, but as a collaborative exercise as well. That some of us on this platform may have to start thinking about forming linkages with others on this platform and other people and other friends in order to truly activate potentials and capabilities that lay dormant inside of you. Because part of entrepreneurship is combining resources, combining competencies, entering into areas of collaborative exercises in order to draw out serious capability to bring vitality and life and energy to an economy, could be yours as well as others. Take note of those definitions. Let me repeat all three. An entrepreneur, because we said in the beginning, the first sight we have of God is that of an innovative, highly creative entrepreneur. That's our first sight of God. That's the image that God wanted us to discover in the very beginning. Not a savior, not a redeemer, but he's an innovative entrepreneur. What is entrepreneur? Entrepreneurship deals with organizing, managing, and assuming the risk of an enterprise for the good of others. Can you imagine the risk that God was stepping into to take all of his creation and put it in the hand of this created being? That's a risk. That's a big risk. Think about Jesus taking his whole redemptive effort and leaving it in the hand of 12 individuals. That's a risk. Every single time we step into business, every time we step into entrepreneurship, there is a risk component to that. The problem with most business people and the problem with most individuals is that you always want to step out and have total mastery and control of everything. The issue is wherever there's risk, there is not so much mastery. Only God maintains mastery in that regard. But if we are defining you stepping out into some area of entrepreneurship, then you must be willing to surrender this whole posture of being a complete professional and having complete mastery over all issues. There is the element of risk. An entrepreneur is an agent of change. It is the process of discovering new ways of combining resources in order to give new vitality to an economy. Let me go a little further. And I'm going to stop at some point and have some more interaction and then ask Charles and other guys to jump in. An entrepreneur, very important, identifies a commercial need in their community, crafts a business idea, and takes the lead role in starting their business. Take note of that point as well, because I really want to stir and awaken this issue, because most of our churches are depending on people's tithe and offerings, and some of you as leaders are so dependent on the piecemeal givings of this one and that one that we have to seriously begin to think about identifying commercial need and crafting business ideas and taking the lead and starting something so that we would be able to have more available to us all to effectively finance the work of the kingdom. Because at the end of the day, God gives us the power to get wealth, not so that we will meet our needs, but so that we would be able to advance his covenant and advance his kingdom. The problem with Western civilization is that we have become so materialistic, we become so commercialized, we become so capitalistic, and we become so greedy that the moment we see wealth, we see comfort for ourselves, that is. An entrepreneur identifies a commercial need in the community, crafts a business, and then he takes the lead in starting that. So entrepreneurship. An entrepreneur is an individual who creates and grows a business through creative ideas. Critical part there, creative ideas. And so it is important for us to begin to surrender this notion that if I am an individual who loves God, that the only area of ministry is full-time. That is one of the most injurious part of our creative and innovative agenda, because too many great thinkers and innovators subjected themselves to full-time ministry in a church and not pursuing the innovative capability that lives inside of them that truly exists outside the boundaries of a church environment. Most of us just surrendered that. There are way too many good thinking people who are lost inside of a full-time ministry. Another thing that we've done within our church environment is that the moment a person gets saved, they want to walk away from the marketplace. They want to walk away from the world, as it were, and they either want to go into full-time ministry or become a missionary. And that is the mindset that has robbed us of so much productivity. We either want to become a missionary or we want to go into full-time ministry. And so much capability reside inside of all of us, but we surrender that for the sake of a deluded perspective on what ministry is. So these are basic definitions of entrepreneur. We're going to build on that, right? Now listen, hear me. The influence of business is not subject to end-time realities. I've been doing a lot of research about the 666, the mark of the beast, and all this kind of stuff on how the objective of end-time realities and eschatology, it anchors itself to the area of business. You won't be able to buy or sell unless you have the mark of the beast. In other words, economics is a critical part of end-time reality. Business is a critical part of end-time reality. Trade is a critical part of end-time reality. You won't be able to buy or sell unless you have the mark of the beast. The point is, the influence of business is not just subject to end-time reality. It becomes critically important at the end times. And I believe that a large part of the current church, would find itself depending on the mark of the beast to survive if we get into eschatology, because we have basically designed a quality of life that puts us independent on that mark of the beast, because we never thought about alternative economic models. We would criticize the banking system, we'll criticize the amortization structure, but we will never build alternative models. Now, if we can build alternative economies and truly begin to activate entrepreneurship on a new level, then listen, we don't need to depend on the Babylonian model to buy and sell. The end of times and eschatology would be rewritten not as us being victims of a system, but by us being victors in that environment. Listen to me again. The influence of business is not subject to end-time reality, but it continues to shape policies far more powerfully than theology. Hear me. The point I'm making is this, that business is far more powerful in shaping policies than your theology. While we are trying to theorize and giving forth spiritual laws and hoping that our prayer would shape humanity, nothing is powerfully changing policies and changing systems more than business. And if you think about that, you would understand how far behind the eighth ball the church finds itself. Nothing shapes policy more than business in our world. Nothing shapes it more than that. Listen to the scripture. Laughter and bread go together. Wine gives sparkle to life, but it's money that makes the world go around. That's the Message translation, Ecclesiastes 10:19. It is money that makes the world go around. Now, you could put that in the context of physics. In other words, your theories don't move this life, Your four spiritual laws does not move this life. You think it's moving. Nothing is moving. The thing that moves this earth is money. And this is not, we're not talking about money in a greedy, self-indulgent kind of world. What I'm saying to all of us on this platform, we have to revise and rethink our whole perspective about monetizing what we do. We have to rethink how we approach life and how we pursue kingdom realities. Laughter and bread go together. Wine gives sparkle to life, but it's money that makes the world go around. And so if you can have wonderful theories, understand this, your theories don't move the world as much as you think it does. Business is what is shaping policy more than anything else. Now, do you realize, as crazy as Elon Musk might be, as crazy, as insane, as vacuous and empty-headed as he might be, the world listens to him far more than they listen to you, You ever ask why? Some of us on this platform have more brilliance and more intelligence than Elon Musk. He gets out there and buys a company for $4 billion, and almost everything that comes out of his mouth is nothing more than twaddle. But despite his much twaddle, the earth is waiting on tenterhooks to hear what he has to say. Not because he has grand ideas, but he has a megaphone, and his megaphone is his money. On the other hand, we have people with incredible wisdom and brilliance, but the earth will not listen to them. They are wise, but poor. Money makes the world go around. Very important principle. Now, hear me. Why money matters and why business matters. I'm gonna identify a few very important principles. The 21st century has been designated as the century of global business. That's what has been allocated. If you go back to the start of this 21st century and read all of the gurus of our times, this is how they designated this century. The 21st century has been designated the century of global business. More than any institution, business is likely to shape the face of our world. See that part right there? Take note of that. More than any institution, and I want you to put there, any institution means the church, your denomination, your apostolic network, whatever it is, more than any institution, business is likely to shape the face of our world. Now, if business is likely to shape the face of our world, where do we come in? How do we speak into that particular world? The reason why we could point a finger at Islam and Islam laughs at our finger pointing is because, listen, Islam stands on the wealthiest piece of real estate, and they know how to turn oil and make it Allah's gold. That's what they call oil. Oil is Allah's gold. And so they have the economic power in more ways than you could possibly imagine. More than that, they have a banking system that is superior to our Western banking system. So you could criticize them all you like. You could condemn them all you like. They have a superior banking system, and they're sitting on Allah's gold. What do we have? What do we have? Let me say it again. The 21st century has been designated the century of global business. More than any other institution, including church, business is likely to shape the face of our world. The sheer magnitude of the resources controlled by corporations make it almost certain that business will dwarf the influence of every other traditional institution. Read that again. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is because I'm basically saying that you cannot change policies and change the world. The reason why in our own political environment in the West, particularly in the United States, you have lobbyists, and lobbyists have the ability to strong arm some of these senators and some of these congressmen into making decisions because they have the clout, the economic capability. The sheer magnitude of the resources controlled by corporations make it practically impossible, almost certain, that business will dwarf the influence of other traditional institutions, including the church. Including the church. Hear me further. Of the 150 largest economies in the world, nearly half are not countries, they are businesses. Of the 150 largest economies in the world, nearly half of those companies is not countries. There are some companies who have more than enough money to almost pay all of your national debt, all of it. Apple, for example, could clear all of the US debt and then some. And so we cannot ignore the role of entrepreneurship, the role of money making. In short, companies doing business will, in many ways, dictate the kind of world we live in. That's the point I want you all to get. Companies doing business will, in many ways, dictate the kind of world that we live in. Listen to me. Thus, for Christians interested in advancing God's agenda of peace and justice, reconciliation, redemption, and go on, a focus on business and its role in society are absolutely critical. I took all of that little kind of scenic route looking at business and what corporations are doing. I didn't give you all of the figures, but the point is, the thing that is shifting policy and putting demands on governments and institutions is not theory, not three spiritual laws. Money makes the world go around. And so you cannot have an empty-pocketed Christian trying to shape policies in a world that is highly dependent, and they would listen to the dollars. Listen to the dollars. Now we do need to wake up and activate a class of business and entrepreneurs that we've never done before. And that is why these conversations are being had. And we're going to do a master class. We're going to designate a master class. And some of the stuff I'm saying here, I'm quickly kind of moving past. We're going to drill deeply into it and see how this thing works. So let me go further. Let me identify 5 critical areas for entrepreneurship development. 5 areas. And I'm going to stop, and maybe next week I'm going to drill into these 5 areas. But once I'm done, look at these 5 areas when I have Charles come and share a couple of things just off of his own heart. Now, 5 areas that I want us to talk about maybe next week and the week after. 5 areas of critical entrepreneurship development. Area number 1, the issue of actionable insight. This is something I want us to look at, because we cannot raise up entrepreneurs on a whim. We can't just say, well, hallelujah, God gonna raise up. That's what Christianity did. We thought we just declare it, name it, it will happen. No, we have to begin to explore areas of actionable insight. That's an important point. Area number 2, we have to talk about the issue of situation awareness, becoming aware of your environment, your world, because we said earlier that an entrepreneur, he looks at the circumstances in front of him and he creates business that is almost appropriate for his time. Most of us are so lost in a bubble of Christianity that you are unaware of what's happening in your world. You are unaware of the trends. You are unaware of what is happening in the market, the data. You just completely lost in your religious bubble, reading your Bible and thinking it's all that you need to know in order to exist in a world that you are designated an ambassador. The second issue is situation awareness. The third issue is the issue of just raw data, raw data. Jesus said, no man who wants to build a tower will not first sit down and count the cost to determine whether he has enough to build, because he might suddenly find himself starting and then realize that he's an embarrassment because he did not sit down and analyze the data. Did not say, well, okay, this is what we must do. This is why we must do it. And so if we're going to be raising up a generation of kingdom entrepreneurs, we have to talk about the raw data. Let's exploit. Let's see what we can do and what we cannot do. Issue number 4, we need to talk about the issue of just pure analysis, to sit down and look at the thing. Hear what the Bible says. It is the glory of God to conceal a matter. Look at the other part. It is the glory of kings to search it out, It's our responsibility to do analysis. That's who we are. We have the responsibility to search out. But again, you read that scripture and you just think that it is the glory of God to conceal a matter. And so we have to search out revelation and scriptures to understand subtext and to understand, to deconstruct the word of God and get a principle and have a message to preach. No. We have to search out. The whole issue of analysis is our ability to look into life and deconstruct life and know where we can do what. And finally, the fifth area that we have to explore is horizon scanning or future casting. Very important. The issue of future casting will not only put us in a position where we are aware. So situation awareness deals with current, present tense. But future casting is putting us ahead of the game before the time comes. And these are 5 areas that we need to explore as we step into a world of building business and creating a new brand of kingdom entrepreneur. We're going to drill into these 5 areas over the next couple of weeks. Let me just kind of hint at 2 of them. Just 2 of them we're going to hint at. So let's hint at number 1, actionable insight. Now, you know what the Bible talks about? What do you see? You know, God always asks that actionable insight. Actionable insight is not just some kind of nebulous concepts. You know, like we gave you the example of God coming to Abraham and saying to Abraham, what do you see? As far as your eyes can see, I can give you. Whatever Abraham saw resulted in Abraham moving his tent and reconstructing his existence. That is what I call actionable insight. It is not just nebulous ideas. And so when we talk about actionable insight, I'm talking about revelation is for function. We have to break this current model of Christianity where we live in this ooh and ah, never heard it before. Wow, that's deep. No, we are no longer concerned about deep and deepness and depth and revelational profundity. That does not work. Actionable insight, where we provide truth that can be executed. Revelation is not for admiration. Revelation is for function. Somehow, truth seen must translate in truth applied. We can no longer have a nice bunch of wonderful ooh and ah. Actionable insight is revelation that is functionable. Information and revelation must be translated into execution. The thing must be applied. And so if we're raising up entrepreneurs, we can no longer sit down and talk about all these nebulous concepts like Saul's advice, not Saul, what's his name? This guy who was overwhelmed with Lot's advisors. You know, these guys came and talked a lot about all these wonderful, deep and profound stuff, the arrangement of the stars, and they were all described as sorry advisors. Is it Job? Sorry, not Lot. Forgive me, Job. They were described as sorry advisors. Why? They were giving nebulous ideas, deep, very profound, but nebulous. So information and revelation must be translated in execution, not nebulous, cerebral tickling that can't be animated or actioned. So you have this, wow, that is so deep. Wow, never heard it like that before. Wonderful little ideas. We cannot engage in that level of twaddle. nebulous cerebral tickling that cannot be animated or actioned. When we talk about actionable insight, we are describing revelation and information that can be structured, that can eventually provoke deliberate, informed action. That is actionable insight. Actionable insight. And so from our end, or from your end as a leader, if you are engaged in switching on the business and marketplace component, remember what I said earlier, that this is not a nebulous area, not nebulous, sorry, esoteric. It is not designed for a few, because the king and peasant model is what fooled us into believing that this is only available for some, but not available to me. This is part of your DNA. I don't care whether you dropped out of school in first grade or whether you have a PhD. It's part of your DNA. It's part of your DNA. Please pursue your degrees and get your PhDs, etc. But most of the people who have moved this world in an innovative level, they dropped out of school. Why? Because what we call schooling is actually uneducating us. It is messing with our system, because this is what is basically cutting off our opportunities and cutting off our potential. Next, let me quickly give you a hint. We're going to expand on this. Number 2, it's the whole issue of situational awareness. Situational awareness. Just to give you a biblical address, the whole idea of the ant. The Bible said the ant gathers their food in the summer. It is aware of circumstances around right there immediately in their space. And so they make decisions based on stuff right in front of them. And so it is not unaware, insensitive, living away in a bubble, lost to reality. It is aware of situations in front of it. Now, when we talk about situational awareness, what do I mean? The ability to read the room. The ability to read the room separates the innovators and producers from consumers. If you don't know the pulse beat of your time, you will forever, or we will forever be on the opposite end of the spectrum. Our inability to read the pulse beat of our times would constantly have us at the lowest rung of this whole ladder. The ability to read the room separates the innovators and producers from just the arbitrary consumer. We have to be able to know what's happening in front of us. Being aware of what is happening around you and appropriately responding, that is situational awareness. Being aware of what is happening around you and knowing how to respond. Knowledge of the prevailing trends. Demographic segmentation, that's a nice term, demographic segmentation. How young people thinking today? Why is the internet influencing people's decision? Why is social media so critical? Why is TikTok taking over? That's demographic segmentation. Most of us are not aware of these fundamental issues. So situational awareness deals with knowledge of prevailing trends, demographic segmentation, and spirit-inspired empathy. When I say spirit-inspired empathy, that you become one with the circumstances in front of you. You become aware of, you become sensitized to, that you bleed and you hurt as you look at circumstances in front of you. And that's important. Spirit-inspired. I'm not talking about emotionally driven empathy. And so situational awareness is knowledge of the prevailing trends, demographic segmentation, spirit-inspired empathy. And what does this speak to? Anticipating challenges, seizing opportunities. Situational awareness deals with anticipating challenges, seizing opportunities. I'm going to stop right there for today, and I'm going to pick up on this next week to be continued. And so let me open up the lines. Let me turn the mic over to Charles. Charles, is there? Charles, you there? Opiyo, are you there? I don't know if I'm being heard.
His
mic is open?
Yeah.
Okay, man. Okay, Charles, let me turn the mic over to you. Anything that you want to add to that, or anybody wants to jump in, you could do that, all right? So let me turn this over to Charles for a second.
Charles, are you there? Mic is open. I don't know. Whatever, we see him there. Charles? All right, Andy, I think Charles is going to relog back on. He's going to log back on again. Having a problem with his audio, no doubt. All right, any questions or comments regarding what Anderson was mentioning to us? One of the things, I mean, this really connected with me.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hey, there he is.
Okay. I had a mic problem, I think. I'm back on. Okay. All right, just a few quick thoughts. Andy, from where you've come from opens up all sorts of parameters about the seriousness about what happens. And I kind of want to just pull a stream from the Genesis idea where you began on the whole idea that when God first shows up, the dimension we see of him is a dimension of innovation, creativity, entrepreneurship, which is a far removed picture from the God that we meet in the Christian world. The God we meet in the Christian world either is waiting for us to do something wrong so he can sort us out. He's got this reward and punishment model that's designed and already programmed for our life, or he's somebody we cry out to fix our problem, to kind of deal with stuff we're dealing with. So it's a completely different shift, just beginning there with the whole idea of what dimension, what is our understanding of God to even begin this, and just getting this new backdrop that gives us the picture that his first visibility is a visibility, for lack of a better term, of work, of productivity, of innovation. And what is also interesting about the appearance or how God shows up, he shows up with a certain structure that he designs so that everything should work. And I always find that profound, that God, having all power, didn't just decide to make one declaration and then everything just showed up and sat in place. There was a sequence to how he actually operated. And in the sequence of operations, we see a number of dynamics. We see the importance of space, of time, of matter, of energy. And this becomes like a framework. I mean, I'm just touching also slightly on stuff we'll be talking about in the future, but this framework is important. And even though this framework is important, God doesn't just call in space, time, matter, and energy in one sentence. There seems to be an order in which God operates. And that order is absolutely amazing in the fact that everything that gets created is dependent on what was created before it. So it's almost like before God, one thing shows up, something else that depends on must show up first. And as we begin to see that begin to move, then suddenly the clarity of what God is doing begins to make a bit more sense in terms of how we should work. And this is the problem. We come from a church order that basically has this idea that you come out of a decree, something is said, and suddenly you will be blessed. You will make money. You will, and it just doesn't fit the structure of the order in which God put things in play even before we see that. And we see in creation that he first gives us two dimensions, the invisible and the visible. Then he takes the visible, divides it into three dimensions, earth, water, sky. After those dimensions, he begins to bring in other issues that depend on these three. Plants, the sun, the moon, the stars, they depend on the existence of the earth, the water, and the sky. And we see man finally come in. So it's almost like in God's creative order, he does not create anything before he creates an environment that can sustain it. So just drawing out of this, it means our entrepreneurship must have a dynamic of understanding that we can't just wake up today and think this is how stuff works. Everything requires an environment to thrive in. The environment must pre-exist, whatever that is. And these are going to be all issues of innovation, issues of situational awareness, issues of everything that you've touched on, and yet it's always been there from the beginning structured within Genesis. So like you said, we will be digging deep into Genesis to get stuff that gives us the design for where we are going. So those are just some of my thoughts.
Oh, that's absolutely excellent, man. Excellent. Listen, guys, one of the things that I really would want to push later this year is just a masterclass in some of these areas. On this platform, what we will do is just kind of apply principles with broad brush, but we want to actually do a masterclass in areas of this and do real detailing, explore some of the more detailed areas that we would not announce on this particular platform. But this is a critical area in going forward. And I know for some of us on this platform, you join this conversation hoping for real revelation and breakthrough and advancement and things to decree and shift the world around. This is where, and this is how we shift the world around us. And so I want us to jump on this platform. Next week, we're going to build and expand on this, but let's have some more conversation around these issues. Let me kind of throw a couple more people under the bus. Frederick, what do you think, Frederick? What's going through your mind there, Frederick? Frederick Tobin out of the UK. You there, Frederick?
Yep. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you very well, yeah.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I mean, just by a little observation in Genesis, you can see that what's quite exciting about the Lord is that and historically he always works with people to develop new frontiers and to break boundaries, and I think that requires an entrepreneurial spirit to do that, and it's always going to challenge convention, and so, you know, when we say the earth is the Lord's, in other words, the real estate belongs to him, then along with that, there should be a healthy expectation of the development of an architecture that we are involved within. I think the challenge is that for many of us, we have grown up, and when I say architecture, I'm not talking about a building, I'm talking about a system. For many of us, we've grown up as spectators and participants in systems, not collaborators and strategists within systems. So what happens is majority of us are employees, to translate that, majority of us are employees or self-employed. We are not necessarily the businessmen and the investors that actually are at the frontiers creating the new world every time there's a new phase or a new iteration. But when God calls out a man, it's very much for that purpose. It's to challenge an existing system by creating a new system modeled on that particular human being or that group of people, or in the case of Israel, a nation. And so, you know, it takes a nation to dispossess a nation, whether that's politically, economically, or militarily, or through technology for that matter. So we are living in a time where the technocrats of the day, society is being led by the new businessmen, the new entrepreneurs are technocrats. They can bypass the political systems, they can bypass the military systems in order to impose their will. And it's for us to see these new frontiers as exciting challenges that brings a breath of fresh air to the idea of what it means to overcome in Christ.
Beautiful. That is so well said, man. That is so well said, because it really puts us in a position. I mean, you talk about the technocrats and the entrepreneurs and the businessmen who are almost circumventing the systems in front of them. And then you're always left with this sad question: where does the church find itself in that particular space? And hence the reason I started with this whole need for us to do course correction, because as I said earlier, if we do not correct this ship, if we don't right this ship, we would just be engaging in a piecemeal corrective exercise. But every single time you have a platform like this, by Sunday morning, people leave this platform and take the 10 steps backward, right back into a religious world. and our religious thinking continues to discombobulate our whole perspective, canceling out the truth of God and subscribing to religion. And so this is the reason why we started by talking about the criticality of course correction, because this here must be fitted into a particular space where we cannot be obstructed in going forward. Very well said. Let me ask, let me throw a couple of people. I see Eric John is on the line. Eric, let me kind of give you the mic. I see Kamau is there as well, but let me ask Eric. Eric is a guy, he's been on this platform for a while. I've been chatting with Eric over the last couple of weeks. Very, very sharp, very honorable, very decent human being. But he's also involved in areas of business. So some of this stuff would speak very profoundly to him. So Eric, can I ask you to unmute your mic and just tell me what you're thinking about based on what we're hearing?
Yes, Andy, thank you. When I'm thinking, I try not to think too much these days, you know, so I'm not hearing the Lord tell me much really, but man, you guys are just, you know, spot on with this. And I am in the business world. And over the last 12 months or so, I've actually done exactly what you're talking about today. So this is hitting me pretty hard. It's a great time for this topic of discussion, as the Lord is starting to recreate, as you're saying, you know, the world engines, as Frederick has been talking about. I love all the conversations. I don't know what I can say other than I'm just in agreement with everything going on, and I'm supremely happy to be sitting at this table. But you know, to recreate churches that currently exist into kingdom organizations, if that's even the right word, rather than, you know, independent churches or denominations of some sort. As I mentioned in the chat at the beginning, all things are progressive and require maintenance, healing, deliverance. And the way I see it, transforming churches is a global healing and deliverance ministry, as you are currently engaged, or we are currently engaged. So I don't have much other thought at this time other than to contribute that this is an amazing platform that has been created through all of you, you know, Kelvin and Fred and anyone else that's in the leadership of that sort. And you guys are doing an amazing job. I don't yet have the ability to contribute much more than these thoughts, but I am extremely eager and excited to be in some level of support, however that may be, and in every way that constitutes this gathering, this group of people globally. I'm just very happy. I happen to be in the Fort Lauderdale area. If anyone happens to be in the South Florida region and wants to come together on a secondary note or on a sidebar from what we do this Thursday, I believe that creating these smaller cells in different regions of the world would be helpful, so that we create these little groups or teams that the Lord can create and or the leadership of this group, just so that it has a little more personal touch to it rather than these Zoom gatherings. I do believe that as a community, people still need to come together to form some form of structure locally, and where, you know, Jesus would meet in the homes of peoples. You know, we're unable to do that because we're on a global level. So I'm just suggesting that if there are people who are locally connected, it would begin the dynamics on the smaller micro scale as we continue on this macro scale that you've created here in this global enterprise of the kingdom culture. So that's all I'm going to state for today. Otherwise, I'll start to babble a little bit. So I appreciate this opportunity. And I'm sorry I don't have my video on. I'm not quite prepared for this presentation, but I'm extremely happy for that time, sir.
Excellent, Eric. I like the point that you make, Eric, in terms of the smaller groups. Is something that I've been encouraging a lot of guys to do. Just to build communities wherever they are, gather people, meet them, share
Amen.
the word of the Lord, get this stuff out, because you know what, at the end of the day, this and other platforms are out there. I could recommend a whole host of others who are doing remarkable work, just as I did earlier in this presentation. But wherever you are and you have influence, try to utilize this influence and don't just be hearing it and holding on to it. Something I taught years ago. You know that every ant, the Bible said, go to the ant. You know, every ant has two stomachs. Every ant, they have two stomachs. With one, they feed themselves, and with the other, they store food for some friend within their own colony.
Amen.
And so when you come to this platform, assume the ant disposition. Go to the ant, you slug, and consider its ways. And so you can't come on this platform and just absorb truth and disappear. And some pastors go and try to teach this in their churches to sound impressive. That is not what this platform is for. Have your two stomachs with you. Feed yourself and feed others. And I think that's important. And I like that point. So if at all, you all could form some clips, some groupings, create interaction on a bigger level, please do that. Please join and merge and connect. That'd be really very good. All right. I saw, who is it? I saw Kamau out of Kenya was also, he had his hand up. So let me ask you, Kamau, to put your hand up. And maybe, guys, just stick with us for a little bit, because at the end, I'm going to turn the microphone back over to Frederick, who has some really important information to share with us in going forward. So let me ask Kamau to unmute his mic and share with us what's going on, Kamau.
Hey, happy New Year, Anderson and the team. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Amen.
Good. I was looking at this. This is quite provocative. I was looking at the whole conversation, and one of the things which also touched me the other time and today is this issue of wise but poor. You know, when we, as you have said, when we get knowledge, when we get revelation or knowledge, it is for application. So it's a total contradiction when wise, that means that person is knowledgeable. But unfortunately, they are not applying that to get them out of that situation of poverty. So wise but poor. So it leads only to so much theory that, yes, there is so much information, there is even much liberation or knowledge, but the actionable part where we are supposed to apply it becomes a challenge. And in effect, that means it just remains knowledge that cannot help us. And if it cannot help us, then it is, it is not helpful. It cannot help the person who has it, neither can it help the community. So it's what, like Anderson says, it's just what's needed. The world is actually tired of theory. If it is theory, the world has a lot of it. What the world is looking for is the fruits, what is tangible. What is tangible that they can see. Number two, looking at the whole issue again of how can we move forward so that the world can see what we have. Because as you started, God gave us, when he said he created us in his image and likeness, he already gave us the creative power. But we are, of course, we are gifted differently. And one of the things that I have seen, it comes from the apprenticeship. Apprenticeship, we most of us know it, is where someone who is gifted in an area would take a certain group and empower them practically in that area. And to me, apprenticeship and impartation, they are very close. So to me, it's important for communities to appreciate people who are gifted differently in those communities, give them opportunities to work other people or to give their experiences in those areas so that we are able to touch people, we're able to show, to come up with what we are saying, the fruits, because the world, what the world needs is to see the fruits. As you said, when you look at Elon Musk, all of us, we can see what is happening. We are not saying good or bad, but everyone can see. The other time we had the World Cup in Qatar. We saw the muscles, the economy, the power of the economy there. So this is what the world needs, that we have to show the practical bit. So in the apprenticeship, for example, I'm in business. If I was to talk about business, I would be able to say, these have been my ups and downs, and therefore, people are mentoring in business. I will tell them, walk this path, avoid these pitfalls. This is how it has been. For example, we have a new area that we have engaged ourselves in, a new division in solar. And yesterday, for example, we commissioned our first solar business. In between starting the theory and the first commissioning yesterday, I can assure you we have had our ups and downs for several months. So if, for example, I was to talk about it, I would say, I would talk the theory, but I would add with the practical part of it, even to show this is how we have done it, this is where we went wrong, this is how we are able to collect it, this is the course correction, and eventually, these are the results, the fruits. You put on the button here, the solar system is working perfectly well. But before you get to the section of perfectly well, we had our ups and downs. We had this, we had to correct this, we had to correct this. And eventually, this is something we start with to show the practicality. So the world is looking for the practical bit. They want to see the tangibility. So, and I think most of us are gifted in the apprenticeship. We can mentor as in different parts of the world. And the other thing which I've also had people here alluding to is, with this knowledge we have, and it's very easy to apply, how can even we come up with different groups under the global conversation, different groups, and apply what we are learning practically, that now you see, here we are, this is what we are doing, these are the results. We have had our ways here, and now up where we are showing it practically. The practicality of the kingdom, the fruits, no one doubts the fruits. When you see an apple or a mango, you are sure this is it. There's no confusion, no contradiction, no one can doubt. So thanks very much. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. I think one of the points that you that you're sharing there, Kamau, is something that we definitely have to explore, the areas of mentoring and entrepreneurship. Not entrepreneurship. The whole issue of providing people with opportunities and providing opportunities where young businessmen or even budding businessmen and young entrepreneurs can more or less walk into a business and go through an apprenticeship program. I know that we could easily do what we call broadcasting apprenticeship, which I don't really fully subscribe to, where you just have, let's say, 20 guys who are interested in getting into areas of business, and you just have somebody talk to them. We'll do some of that, but it is important that we develop such trusted relationships that I could say, here are 3 persons that we could have to work with Eric for a couple of weeks, that they could get some close up and very, very detailed engagement, and that they could learn some of the basic tricks of the trades. And we could use people like you, Henry, that we could point people to, that people could work with you for a period of time and learn the tricks of the trade. And you don't just kind of have them working for you, but exposing them and bringing them close. But it is something that we will definitely have to consider, particularly as we switch on this component of creating kingdom entrepreneurs. That's a good idea. Good idea. One of the benefits of interaction is that it allows you to more or less spy into other people's thoughts and expand your own. And so very, very good contribution. I see, is it, Lillian out of Liberia? Yeah, Lillian. You could unmute your mic, tell us what's going through your mind, what you're hearing. And if there's anyone else after Lillian, put your hand up quickly that we could point you in that direction. Yeah, Lillian.
Happy New Year, everyone. I guess what stuck out to me as you were talking was just, this one question, which is, what is the work of the kingdom? Because I think that based on what you said, there really is a need, not necessarily to redefine, but just kind of accurately define what is the work of the kingdom, because you're right. Whether you're raised in church or you're kind of a new, a recent convert, as it were, you're socialized into this kind of thing where you're either in the Ushers Guild or you're an acolyte or whatever, and I've enjoyed all of those, or you're in the choir because I can sing. So anytime I try not to sing anymore, because anytime I sing, everybody's like, oh, what church do you go to and are you in the choir? And they, there's so many different boxes that you're expected to fit into that have no room for the vistas of creativity that we're each capable of. And so kind of, really establishing what is the church really supposed to be doing if not all these other, activities, this other busy work, then what else is there? Because I think that that's something that needs to be amplified in the space, in the Christian square. If I can put it that way, to kind of shift the paradigm of what is a body of Christ supposed to be doing? Because I work in government, I've worked in the Ministry of Finance at a high level, and we have reverends, we have pastors coming to a Muslim minister of finance asking for money for their Christian programs. And I'm sitting there profoundly embarrassed because I want to tell that man, but he's too old for me to tell him that, to get up and go outside, because you can't be talking about your religion is superior. And, there's this whole kind of thing about Liberia as a Christian nation. And so, no Muslim can crack the presidency. But then you can't seem to find the means to carry out your own project without coming to government to fund it for you. Yeah. But I mean, it's because there is that thinking out there that, okay, yes, the church should be able to do something entrepreneurial, and also kind of, socially impactful. But then the thinking around it is kind of, oh, we got to go beg for this money. So meanwhile, we have some great real estate.
One of the reasons why
real estate.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
One of the reasons why this conversation is being had is to turn the dial on that particular conversation. And one of the things that you made reference to, what really is our emphasis. As we explore the Genesis story, think about it. 8 hours, there is what they call the work-rest balance, 8 hours of the day is spent working, 8 hours is spent resting. That's the order, the basic structure of most people's life. And then you have the in-between hours inside of there. So you either have to utilize a certain amount of hours to get up, ready yourself to go to work where you spend 8 hours, or go to school. And then you have to go through a couple hours to get back home, and then you enter into rest. So most of our time is spent working and resting. While the church basically speaks into neither the work and rest component, we are basically utilizing our energy to speak into areas of irrelevance. Work and rest is the order of man's primary day. And what are we speaking to as a church? More often than not, we are speaking to neither of those areas. And so we have to, again, recalibrate our message and speak to the areas of priorities. So good point. We're going to build on that. Good point. Kelvin, you had your hand up. So we have Kelvin, and right after Kelvin, we have Veronica, and then Martin Ellis. Martin, always good to hear Martin. He's always very animated. So Kelvin, go first.
Yeah, Andy, I just wanted to say we have about 5 more minutes or so before we yield to Frederick. So I'm going to defer my comments over. But what I heard today was that it was prophetic. So if you want to hear prophecy, we heard a prophecy today. And what I'm sensing here very strongly is like full circle, going back to Exodus 3. God has heard the cry of his people. And my question is, could it be that this is an answer to that cry? Right. Could it be that this is a portal to the answer to that cry? So that's what I'll yield to. And we'll go to hear from my sister, Miki.
Yeah.
All
Good.
right.
Good, man.
Hey guys, personally, I am done talking. So personally, I am done talking. I'm more about action now. So I'm finding ways and means to gather up resources to do what I need to do. Because as you said, Elon Musk, I mean, he has so much money and people listen to him because you know, I believe people equate wisdom with money, but it's not necessarily so. So if you have money and you are in the position to make changes in people's lives physically, they will listen, even if it's garbage, excuse my language, but they would listen. So I'm gathering momentum. I'm finding ways and means to crack the system and get what I need to get to start what I need to start and do what I need to do. Right now, I mean, I'm open to ideas of business models, how to generate funds, how to generate income. Abraham John has been a little instrumental in that. I mean, he's giving us some references that we are looking into. We need to get this thing done and we need action. I mean, personally, I'm just done talking.
Mm.
That's
Beautiful.
the sound of a motivated woman.
Good. Beautiful. Martin, you're the last one on you're the last contribution. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Frederick. Yeah, Martin, mic is yours.
Kingdom greetings to everyone. I am of course most elated and delighted to be on. And before going any further, let me acknowledge our dear brother Garnet LV. I know you know him, Andy, from Jamaica, one of our leaders from long time.
I shot him a private note. I shot him a private note a while ago.
Yes, so let me acknowledge him. I was kind of late in giving him. I told him about it a couple weeks ago. I was late in giving him even the link for today. But yes, that being said,
hold on, Martin. Martin, hold on. Before you go any further, Garnet, are you there? Where's Garnet? Are you there, Garnet? Unmute your microphone. Let me hear your voice. I haven't spoken to you in forever. Are you there? Garnet, you're safe here. You could say something, huh?
I don't know if he stepped away a little from his thing.
He's okay. He must have stepped away or something. I'm not hearing him. Okay, Martin, shoot. The mic is back to you.
All right. On Sunday, for those of you who know, Abraham John launched a book called The Birthing of a Kingdom Nation, and for those of us who were on, I think it gave even a deeper insight and a deeper clarity, I believe, in what is happening and the groundswell of where we're going or where we should be going somewhat. But like the many other moves, the countless of moves that has happened in the body of Christ, one of the things that has killed it and continue to strangle it is the whole thing of unity. Where we are now, I believe, and I think Kelvin just said it too, we're at such a critical point. And I think what is happening, it will not be stopped. One, it is not controlled by any superintendent, any overseer, or any bishop. And I think that's one of the, yes, sir. So I think that's one of the main things why it will not be stopped, because no one can say, I have the key to the ecclesia and you do nothing unless I say you do it. Of course, that's where most of us coming from. That being said, I believe, and the rest of guys, we will have to now develop. And I know many connections are happening both on this platform and many other platforms. On Sunday, I saw guys that I didn't even know exist. People from all over the woodworks. I believe there has to be a deliberate, and I mean a deliberate coming together of all of you leaders, Abraham, and several others in the different enclaves that they are, where we're going to put things together and say, because until that happens, you know, they're waiting. There's a scripture that speaks about, the only thing that is in Isaiah, but it speaks about they will come and ask us to show us our way, something to that effect. I believe that there has to be that coming together. When I listen to our brother Opiyo, when I listen to all the guys. We on in the mornings, I listen to our brother Timothy that speaks on the Good Morning Ecclesia thing. And everyone, I'm saying, but God, this has to come together. And what has caused us not to make the jump, and because the globe and Babylon in itself, something has to emerge that Babylon has to turn its head and look on. And believe me, we know by now that Babylon will not pay us any mind if some person in Trinidad, some in the US, some in India, wherever else, and there's a one voice, until, and we know this, until each of us come together and present the one ecclesia, then I think we'll continue to have different platforms from every different corners, but not making the impact that we must make. So that's my simple point. And really just want to, so I guess on another time, Anderson, you can tell us what are some of the things that you're doing to connect the many other voices that has grasped and has grabbed this thing and is now pushing it and doing whatever you're doing to bring all of it together so we can have the imprint and the stamp that we must have. Over back to you, Sir Anderson.
Beautiful, beautiful. Excellent. Always like to hear you, Martin. And I like the energy and the passion that comes out of you. And there's a word in English, it's called gerrymandering. Gerrymandering. That's the word that I would use to describe the passion behind your energy. That's good. So, okay, let me turn this mic over to Frederick. Frederick.
Andy, please, before you do, I'd like to acknowledge Bunny. Bunny invited his nephew, Rodney Naidu. If you're on, Rodney, we want to thank you for coming on. He came at the invitation of Bunny. Bunny, we appreciate you inviting your nephew, Rodney Naidu, on. Did he make it, Bunny? Did he come on? Do you see him? Bunny.
He's listed under Samsung.
He's listed under Samsung. I think I know Rodney Naidu.
Conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
We just wanted to greet him. That's all, Bunny. Thank you. Andy, you want to greet him? You want to greet him, Andy?
I think I know Rodney. Rodney, I believe I know him. Bunny, do I know Rodney? Is that the same Rodney that I know? I think I should know him.
He probably was younger when you met him, but I don't think you do. There was another Rodney you're talking about.
Okay, yeah, okay, good, man, cool. Well, Rodney, good to have you on the call, man. I mean, listen, any friend of Bunny's is a friend of ours. So make yourself very comfortable here. Excellent. All right, guys, let me turn the microphone over to Frederick. Frederick is a very critical part of this platform and this conversation, and an even more important part of my life and my world. Frederick expands me and broadens my perspectives in all kinds of ways, and so he do have some important information to share. So, Fred, the mic is yours. Let me turn it over to you, and you take it forward, man.
Great, thanks very much, Andy. Kelvin, do you mind just giving me share capabilities?
I got you. Give me a second here.
Thanks very much.
Real quick. Yeah. Where's Frederick? There you are, Fred. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You are great.
Awesome.
You're good.
Let's have a look. Brilliant. So I won't take too much more of your time because a lot has been said. Hopefully everyone can see the screen that I've shared. Give me a nod if you can, or thumbs up.
We can.
Awesome, brilliant. So I haven't had a chance, so I might as well say a Happy New Year to everybody. And I think as Lillian, I absolutely loved when you said Ushers Guild. I thought that was brilliant. I remembered that and wrote that down. So obviously in the year that's passed in terms of 2022, there's a lot, we're having a lot of conversation about the kingdom, the ecclesia, and citizenship. And one of the things about Restore Citizenship is that our primary goal is to sort of build these what we call digital ecosystems that we use a line designed by citizens for citizens. And one of those particular digital systems that we talk about is the Nation Builders platform. And that's essentially a form of a social networking tool that exists on our website, which you can see in the screen that I've shared. That's currently live. That's version 1.0, but we're actually in the phase of looking to redevelop it and make it more accessible which means basically moving it away from desktop to actually having some sort of app that then is accessible, especially through mobile phones. Now, before we do that, it's really important for us to do some user research. And so I'm reaching out to the community on this platform to contribute to that. Because our sort of philosophy is built by citizens for citizens, it doesn't make sense to build to redevelop the platform and not take into account the input from citizens across the globe. So what I'm asking for is, in the month of January, we're doing a discovery phase. And we would love it if you would maybe attend a workshop. The workshop's not usually longer than an hour and a half, and it's just a conversation. So you don't have to be a techie, and all you need to be is somebody who wants to see the kingdom grow and expand, and want to support the use of technology to do that. So we're inviting you to contribute to that throughout the month of January. It's only one workshop you need to contribute to. I've put a link within the chat that links to book a slot with us, and really just help us. We have a series of questions. It's all prepared, so it's really just getting your input. And also, you might learn something along the way with some of the information that we share. Andy and Kelvin and Ivan and a few others have already sat in to our first workshop, and I think, Kelvin, you would agree it was an insightful workshop and helpful.
Indeed.
It wasn't just about the platform.
Indeed, it was.
Yeah, so I put the details within the chat, but also Kelvin is kindly going to be sending an email out to everybody as well. So please jump on board. We really want to build a healthy online digital ecosystem for citizens, communities, and to evolve our civic duties as well by developing civics. So thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Back to you.
Okay. Thank you, Frederick. Thank you. I really appreciate it. We'll get that email out today around the time we send out this audio as well to you. Andy, did you have any additional words?
No, man, I'm all good. I'm all good. Thank you.
Cool. All right, everybody. Good to have you on. We'll chat with you next week. This is 2023. We're moving forward. Please, whatever you do, after hearing this presentation today, do not minimize your ability to be an entrepreneur. Don't minimize that. And don't minimize the fact that God can use you through business in this day and time. Please. So thank you very much. Good to have you on. We'll talk to you next week. Good night.
Cheers. Good night, everyone.